All right, shalom family. Welcome to another edition of Maccabees TV. As y'all can see, I'm here at Shema Israel, and I'm here with my brother, the mighty Zion Lexx. Shalom, brother.
Shalom.
I'm saying, fresh off your victory, man. You know, you did a great, I want to say, first of all, you did a fantastic job in your presentation. Let's just go right in, brother. How do you think you did this Sunday in your presentation, proving that Sumer predated Egypt? How do you think that you did?
I would think that I did out of 10, I did 20. Shaka Amos spent over an hour and 40 minutes defending something that had nothing to do with the premise of the conversation. The conversation was whether or not Sumeria predates ancient Kemet. Shaka Amos took the first 40 minutes of his lecture to talk about the Pentateuch and the origin of it coming from astrology. The topic is whether or not Sumeria predates Kemet. So number one, he was evading the topic from the beginning, which to me made it clear he was evading the idea that Kemet did in fact surpass and originate much older than Kemet.
Right. So the only, well, first of all, number one, I noticed that on YouTube, there's only about 37 minutes put up of the entire presentation, which was over 5 hours.
Right.
I saw a lot of comments on YouTube about the fact that the presentation that was put up on YouTube actually had about 26 minutes of your opponent speaking, and the balance of the time was you, which gave a skewed presentation of what actually happened in the presentation, and it also affected the comments that were being made, because by virtue of the fact that the man that was your opponent got 26 minutes, people seem to think that he won the debate, and some key points were left out. So you want to expound on that a little bit?
Surely. Number one, Shaka Amos spent a much longer time in his lecture. Shaka Amos had to cut his lecture short towards the end because we went over our time and I did have to leave. Nonetheless, the amount of footage that was shown, which the first one was 37 minutes, Shaka Amos has almost 28 minutes. Some people say 26, but it's almost 28 minutes. And I speak for the remainder, which if you're doing the math between 26 and 28, and we're talking about a 37-minute video, I only have at most 11 minutes of talk time, whereas the brother has 26 minutes of talk time. Automatically, that lets you know that there is a shift in the direction of him to show and prove his ideals as opposed to what I shared and conveyed in that video. For anyone with baseline common sense, that lets you know who the real victor was, because the video should have been split half and half to show you what one brother said and what another brother said. So when you have a 37-minute footage where 26 to 28 minutes is one person speaking and the remaining 11 minutes is another, that's biased to begin with. What most people don't understand is that Shaka Amos represents an HOK. Bottom line, you don't get around the idea that Shaka Amos is one of the poster boys for HOK. So if you watch the live feed and you saw what I did with Shaka Amos, you may understand why it is that he has 26 minutes and I have 11 minutes. It was an embarrassment to the HOK as well as to Shaka. To Shaka first, to HOK second, because HOK put Shaka as the headliner and they put me in as the rookie. As a matter of fact, before the event began, before the tape actually started rolling, they told me that because I'm the rookie, I gotta go first. The rookie wound up tearing up the individual with all of the history with HOK, just to make that clear. Because number one, I spoke about the premise of the event from beginning to end.
All right, Zion, so I'm going to be on the Kemetic side, the HOK side for a second, right? Zion, you lost that debate. I'm going to tell you why you lost that debate. You lost that debate because you did not show dates. So therefore, by virtue of the fact that you did not show dates, then we don't know when those actual images that you presented were actually from, and they could actually be later and not earlier as you claim. So you didn't prove the premise that you set out to prove. This is according to the people that watched the debate. This is also according to some of the comments that I made. What do you want to say about that? What do you want to say about the fact that you didn't show dates? Go ahead.
The first thing I want to address, I think that is the most viable response to my debate. And I actually can legitimize the claim. Because whenever we're having a historical conversation, it's almost impossible to not include dates. Yet there's design to the madness, or there's a method to the madness, so to speak. I did not include dates to all of my slides because all of the dates concerning pre-dynastic Egypt, there's a contention behind it. No two Egyptologists agree as to when the dynastic period began or ended. So for me to throw up dates, knowing that I have an individual who is also supposed to be astute in ancient Kemet, that individual will be able to say, well, according to Budge, the pre-dynastic date begins here, so you fail. According to Petrie, the pre-dynastic date begins or ends here, so you fail. So what I did was I presented information that everyone can go and research for themselves and decide upon the evidence what date best fits the evidence based on what I provide. In other words, I gave enough information for the people to form their own opinion, because me nor Shaka is the beginning or end of truth. Therefore, I gave enough information for people to go out and ascertain whether or not the truth went on my side as opposed to Shaka Amos' side. Now, in contradistinction to that, sure, Shaka Amos, his first claim was, well, how do you say that Sargon is the Scorpion King, and according to this date, Sargon doesn't come until 2700? Here's the problem with that. Did he provide information to substantiate that the date for Sargon was accurate? No, he did not. So it's one thing to say that I have an established timeline without proving that my timeline is valid and viable. Anyone can throw up dates, but in throwing up dates, you also have to prove that your timeline, i.e. your dates, are viable and validated by a multitude of historians. That he did not do. In fact, the conscious community, who is the most hypocritical community I've ever seen in my life, went on the comment board and said Shaka killed Zion Lexx because Zion Lexx didn't show dates. Y'all allowed Shaka Amos to quote Wikipedia. What I quoted was Samuel Noah Kramer, who happens to be the authority on Sumerian history. You don't get bigger in Sumerian history than Samuel Noah Kramer. So when I talked about Sumerian history, I quoted the authority. So the authority is the beginning. I won't say end, but he's the beginning of all the debate, of all the dates. So you can go back and correlate his dates with every other scholar in that community to see which date fits the premise that I gave forth in that interview. Nonetheless, y'all allow Shaka Amos to quote from Wikipedia. Listen, I'm 35 years old. I don't know how many times I have to say this. I'm a grown man. I have children. My oldest children are twins, 11-year-old twins. My twins can go on Wikipedia right now and create a Wikipedia page. So what makes that the basis of truth, wisdom, knowledge, or understanding? When you can have an 11-year-old go on Wikipedia and put forth information. Surely at a given point, Wikipedia will evaluate this information and will say a citation is needed here, a citation is needed there. Nonetheless, this still doesn't account for a huge span of time where this information is allowed to be streamed without it being validated. With that said, you cannot use Wikipedia as a source knowing that a child can go on Wikipedia. The second problem that I have with Shaka Amos' dissertation is that he also cited New York Times. I live in New York. The New York Times is the most racist newspaper in New York. They have spewed the most racist comments towards blacks and Latinos, not just in New York, but in this country. So why would any black man want to quote them simply because there's a writer from New York Times that says that Kemet predates Sumeria? It sounds like that fits your pretext. That fits your underlying thought, something that points to an agenda, which clearly your agenda is to establish that Kemet comes before Sumeria. So with that being said, I will go on record to say from a scholarly point of view that I will take the backlash and I will take the criticism that yes, Zion Lexx, when you're having a historical conversation, you need to establish dates. But because Zion Lexx is not your average scholar, because I understand thoroughly that with the putting forth of dates, you have to not just put forth dates, you have to establish how your dates are accurate and true. I said because there's so much contention with the dates, not just in Sumeria, but in Kemet, I will put forth the information and let the people go and research the dates. To me, that is a scholarly thing to do, as opposed to shoving it down your throat and saying you must accept my premise and the date that I'm giving you. Something that Shaka did without validating the date.
Right. And if I may add on, and you can of course add on to what I'm saying, a lot of the information that Shaka almost presented was conjecture, meaning that because a person has a PhD, Therefore, that everything that they say behind the PhD, we should believe. Because this person.
Say something really quick.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, please.
I'm hoping, because I spoke to Brother Sarnetta, I'm hoping that the footage is not edited to a point where we don't get to see input from Professor James Small. Shaka Amos went immediately after me and stated that although Zion Lexx's presentation may have moved a lot of people who are watching, people who are scholarly cannot take him serious because he doesn't include dates, and he never quoted academia having PhDs. It was my first rebuttal to that. Shaka Amos, do you hold a PhD? No. Zion Lexx, do you hold a PhD? No. Shaka Amos, do you sell books for a living? Yes. Zion Lexx, do you sell books for a living? Yes. Why would I go on camera before a large audience and tell people that in order for information to be grasped as true, it has to have PhD behind it when I don't hold a PhD myself? Shaka, you don't hold a PhD yourself. So why in your presentation you stated verbatim or emphatically that in order for a thing to be true, you need to have PhD academia confirming and validating the veracity of the information that I'm sharing? Shaka, you don't hold a PhD. So are you discrediting every book you ever wrote, or the only one and only book that you wrote? Because you wrote one book, I wrote 3. Not a stab, but just the truth. Are you invalidating your own work in that you yourself don't hold a PhD? In fact, can you produce a bachelor's? I can produce a bachelor's.
Very, very important distinction. So like I was saying, he quoted a lot of so-called PhDs. And there's a thing in the conscious community called peer review, where they're really relying on peer reviews, which is also faulty because there's peer review stuff that I know that they wouldn't agree with. That's right. We know where you have so-called white scholars that are saying that the Egyptians were white people. Peer-reviewed information for that. Right. So, there's a big thing on that, but I think your presentation was good. Briefly, just talk to the people, if you could, and tell us, as briefly as you can, why it is that you believe that Sumeria predates Egypt. Off the top of your head, explain to us why the community should believe that Sumeria predates Egypt.
Well, I'm going to be very technical and begin by using Shaka Amos's premise, which I actually agree with. Shaka Amos stated in the follow-up to our actual debate when he stood on the camera with Reggie, as well as Polite, he said that in order for Zion Lexx to prove that Sumeria authored civilization or ushered in civilization, he has to first and foremost establish that writing comes out of Sumeria. Because you can't speak about the history of any given civilization without recordation. That's something that I actually agree with. So the very first thing that I've shown was cuneiform. Cuneiform writing coming out of Sumeria is what all archaeologists agree is the first written attestation to the origin of civilization and language itself. The very first language documented, and for this interview, because we had the discrepancy with regard to dates, I'll mention dates. The first writing to ever put forth in this earth to be verified by archaeologists comes out of Sumeria in 3400 BCE, before Common Era. Writing doesn't hit ancient Kemet until 3100 BCE. With that being said, there's a 300, almost 400 year difference between the writing of Sumeria and the writing of Kemet. Is that a huge difference when we talk about the large expanse of history? Yes, of course it is. In 300 years, you know how many generations I'm going to make? In 300 years, you know how many historical events will take place? Between last year and this year, a lot of things have taken place. So we're talking about 300 to 400 years of cuneiform preceding ancient Kemet. What I did in my presentation was unique. Not unique to academia because I actually follow the rules of scholarship or a scholarly attempt. It's unique to the conversation that I had with Shaka Amos. Not only did I quote PhD academia, which I did not feel the need to accentuate that they were PhD, because I don't hold the idea that in order to have truth, you have to hold a PhD. So I never stated that my source is a PhD, but when I quoted Samuel Noah Kramer, who holds a PhD, when I quoted Jeremy Black, who holds a PhD, when I quoted Wallace Budge, who holds a PhD, I quoted PhD without saying it. But here's the thing about it. All of these individuals all have in their writings, especially Samuel Noah Kramer, a chart which shows the pictographic origin of Sumerian cuneiform. So when archaeologists state through archaeological evidence, tangible pieces of information that can be verified through scientific research and data, they show that cuneiform precedes the hieroglyphs of the Meta in ancient Kemet or Talmudic. Yet, the cuneiform itself evolved not from cuneiform, which is the wedge shape into a clay platform, but it actually developed from a pictographic script. When you speak about Sumerian cuneiform, you must understand that there is a form of cuneiform which even predates that. It comes out of Ugaritic. If anyone is familiar with geography, Ugaritic is what we would call today northern Syria. Today in northern Syria they speak Aramaic. With that being said, the Ugaritic dialect and phonetics is perfectly interchangeable with Hebrew. So for instance, when you look at the Ugaritic text, their cuneiform as well as their pictographic writings, the first 5 letters, even into the 10 letters, are exactly the same. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Exactly the same as Hebrew. So the ancient Ugaritic cuneiform has the exact same phonetics as Hebrew. But let's not stop there. The Sumerian language is almost one and the same with Hebrew as well, because Sumerian comes out of Ugaritic cuneiform, and Ugaritic cuneiform comes from pictographic Hebrew when you check this Ugaritic record. And the point of reference is Samuel Noah Kramer, who's the authority on Sumerian cuneiform as well as Ugaritic cuneiform. There's also an individual known as Jeff Boehner, who is an authority on Semitic languages, of which Ugaritic is classified as a Semitic language. According to modern archaeology, Sumerian cuneiform comes out of Ugaritic cuneiform, but there's a difference. Sumerian cuneiform comes from Cush, or what the Torah or Bible calls a Hamitic lineage. Ugaritic cuneiform comes out of Shem, which is a Semitic lineage. So that means, according to modern archaeology, the oldest form of writing is of a Semitic lineage. It can be traced back to the Semitics. With that being said, I showed charts. You all saw the video. So you might hate Zion Lexx, you might even hate Hebrew Israelites, but do you hate the documentation? Because you're not in this if you are a genuine pursuer of truth, wisdom, and knowledge and understanding for Kemet alone. I want to believe that you are in pursuit of truth, number one. If Kemet leads you to the truth, then fine, so be it. But truth has no boundaries, and it knows no place. Truth has its own path. We go where the truth leads us. So if the truth leads us to the idea that the first form of language is Sumerian cuneiform, and when you study Sumerian cuneiform, you see that it evolved from Ugaritic cuneiform. Number one, Ugaritic, or the Ugaritic people or nation, are around since 7000 BC. Do you know that the oldest song in the world, S-O-N-G song, comes out of Ugaritic? 3400 BCE. The oldest song in the world can be traced back to Ugaritic, which is in the Levant, i.e. the land of Israel, the Holy Land, in the Lebanon region or southern Assyrian region. With that being said, I presented charts which showed how Ugaritic cuneiform developed into Sumerian cuneiform, and Sumerian cuneiform is the precursor of the Egyptian hieroglyphics, also known as the Meta. So when you look at the Sumerian cuneiform that I showed in that particular presentation on PowerPoint, you see that the very first name presented is Asar. Who is Asar in Kemet? He is what the Greeks call Osiris, the god of Egypt. With that being said, Shaka Amos said in his prelude to our lecture/debate that Zion Lexx shouldn't go before a crowd and teach people, because he had the audacity to compare Nimrod to Asar as if they're one and the same person. Well, check this out. The Torah opens up in Genesis chapter 10, verse 8, by stating this, and I'm going to read it really quick. Genesis chapter 10, verse 8 states, "And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, like Nimrod, mighty hunter before the Lord." Here's the key point to hone in on. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, which is Babylon, and Erech, which is Uruk. We found through archaeology the discovery of Uruk. Uruk as a place was never discovered prior to the mention of the Torah. The Torah, contrary to popular opinion, is the go-to book for historical reference on nations of antiquity. In other words, several nations of antiquity are literally buried in sand. And it is only through their reference in the Torah that they're brought to light. So only in 1930 did an archaeologist discover the city of Uruk, which is called in the Torah Erech. Something the Torah said 2,500 years before discovery. And it also speaks of the land of Shinar, which, linguistically speaking, the Nun, coming from the Hebrew alphabet, is interchangeable with the Sumerian Mem. So the Sumerians didn't speak of a Shinar, they spoke of a Shumer, which later became known as Sumer. The Sumerians spoke of Shumer, which comes from the Hebrew Shinar, which later became in English Sumer. All of these place names are named in Hebrew. Verse 11 says, "Out of that land went forth Ashur, and he," pronoun, "built Nineveh," or in Hebrew, Nineveh. In the text of the Hebrew language, Ashur is not a place name. It is a personal pronoun. It is the name of a person. Ashur built Nineveh. Ashur in Hebrew is Aleph, Shin, Wav, Resh. Ashur. Translated in Sumerian, they don't say sh, they say s. So Ashur in Hebrew becomes Asur in Sumerian. What do the Commissions call Osiris? Asar. Nimrod was called Ashur in Hebrew, but by the Sumerians he was called Asar. I showed that in my chart, where the Sumerians called Asar long before the Commissions spoke about Asar. As a matter of fact, the Sumerian language predates the Elamite language, or what we know today as the Persian language. The Persians speak of their chief god as Ahura Mazda, like your car, Acura, right? Ahura Mazda. When you go from Sumeria into Persian, the H becomes an S, or the S becomes an H from the vantage point of Sumeria. So the Sumerians spoke of Nimrod as Asar, and the Elamites or the Persians called him Akkar or Ahura, because when you go from Sumerian to Persian, the S becomes an H. So the Sumerians said Asar, and the Persians said Ahura. That's linguistics. You can't have a historical conversation about the origin of a civilization and not refer to the linguistics. I have to ask the conscious community a simple question. At one point in Shaka's presentation, did he refer to linguistics? You know, when I did that, Professor Smalls was on record saying, that is what I love about your presentation. Not only did you include historical data, but you also included the idea of going into linguistics. Even when I said that Narma is Nimrod, linguistically speaking, you can see the lingual shift. Because so many people who understand etymology and linguistics understand when you translate a name or a noun into a different language, there may always be a lingual shift, a shift of letters. So Narma in Kemet is actually Nimrod in Sumeria. They dropped the D and the M became replaced by the R in position. Nonetheless, they share the three foundational roots. In ancient Sumeria, as well as ancient Hebrew, all roots are trilateral. The way that we ascertain root words in ancient Sumeria is through trilateral roots. The way that we ascertain root words in Hebrew is through trilateral roots. The trilateral root of Narma is NMR, Narma, or NRM, Narma. Nimrod is NMR. The only difference is the M precedes the R, or the Mem precedes the Resh. Nonetheless, it's the exact same consonants, i.e. linguistics, the same root. And I'm showing you from the Torah actually calls Nimrod Asar when it says that he conquered Nineveh. But there might be a brilliant person out there who knows more Torah than Hebrews. That they might say, wait, in verse 22, it speaks of a Semitic person named Ashur. Big deal. Verses 8 through 21 are talking about a Cushitic lineage. They're talking about the people of Cush. Verse 22 begins the Semitic lineage. So if we see that right after Nimrod was called Nimrod, the very next verse he's called Asur, while it's still describing the Cushitic or the Cushite lineage, then it's not talking about the Ashur of Sem. It's talking about Nimrod also being known as Asar, hence why the Sumerians themselves called him Asar.
Wow, that's powerful, brother. And I was gonna ask you, but I know that was pretty much encoded in the answer that you just gave, why Sumeria was so important for you to start with as a Hebrew Israelite. Because there are people that don't understand why it is that you as a Hebrew Israelite started with Sumeria rather than starting with Israel.
I love that.
But I think that you pretty much answered that. But if you want to expound a little more, please do.
A little bit more.
Yes, please.
So the Torah says that our father Abraham came from the other side of the river. In fact, that is the reason why in Genesis 14, Abraham is introduced as Ha-Ivri, the Hebrew. Iber means the other side. Abraham literally came from the other side of the river. What river are we talking about? The river Euphrates, or the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The other side of that is the Levant, which is the land of Israel. So Abraham came from the other side of that, which would be Sumeria. With that being said, Abraham comes out of Sumeria, which has, according to archaeology, an older civilization than Kemet. The origin of the deification of man comes out of Sumeria, not Kemet. The first man to be worshipped was Nimrod, who's also known as Asar in ancient Sumeria. Forget the fact that he's known as Asar in Kemet years later. He's known as Asar in Sumeria hundreds of years before he's known as Asar in Kemet. So why would we look to Kemet to plagiarize when the place that our forefathers come from, Sumeria, tracing our forefathers ultimately back to Abraham? If Abraham comes from a place which has the oldest mathematical record, which Shaka Amos dropped the ball on, he said, how dare Zion Lexx speak about Sumeria? They didn't have no sciences. They didn't have no math. What an idiot you are. Sumeria didn't have mathematics, didn't have science. Sumerians were dealing with hydraulic equations. You're talking about pre-calculus. For the ancient world, that was extremely advanced. The ancient Egyptians weren't even experts on that. In their own records, they refer. Excellent. So to continue on the idea, you see, when I entertained this lecture, which turned into a debate, I was called for a lecture. And then I saw a flyer the very next day that said, when two worlds collide, who will be standing, Kemet or Israel? And I had to laugh because this was introduced to me as a simple lecture, not a debate. But knowing the contention that exists between the two communities, I came prepared, not for a lecture, but for a debate. So unlike Shaka Amos, I had a fully outlined scholarly presentation, or i.e. PowerPoint. I was prepared for a debate. If anyone watched the live feed, and or if Sonetta chooses to pull or convey the full video, you will see that Zion Lexx did give an entirely scholarly presentation. Shaka Amos spent 40 minutes talking about a topic that had nothing to do with the topic, which is trying to prove that the Torah comes from the Pentateuch, and the Pentateuch is of Greek origin. Mind you, the topic is whether or not Sumeria predates Kemet. So why spend 40 minutes on that? What's your agenda? What are you thinking? That's intellectual madness, in my opinion. Because you're being killed on the idea that Sumeria predates Kemet, because I'm presenting my information and you're not trying to challenge it. Instead, what you're doing is going into a topic that has nothing to do with my premise. Number one, I read Hebrew. All Hebrews read Hebrew. With that being said, what do I care about any translation when I understand the original Hebrew text? So your Pentateuch, which is of Greek origin, which we both acknowledge, what in the hell does that mean to me when I speak the original Hebrew language and can recognize the Hebrew text? Your brother Polite speaks the Hebrew language, not as good as us. And he knows that. And that's not a shot, it's the truth. With that being said, he even understands. Why would that argument be placed to Zion Lexx? He understands the language perfectly. So why have an argument about whether or not a translation from the original is legit when we understand that Hebrews understand the original? So you wasted the first 40 minutes on that. Then your rebuttal was really weak because you started to make statements that you clearly had no knowledge of and saying that Sumeria didn't understand math and science. When in fact, as I showed earlier, they were as far as quadratic equations. To go a step further, let's touch on your pyramids. You know, if you're on a construction site and you approach the foreman and you wish to see a spreadsheet for design, the first thing that an intelligent mind would acquiesce is the idea of what the design of the structure is based on, what mathematical formula, i.e., who actually is the author of this structure. What does that mean? The Sumerians had what is known as a sexagesimal mathematical formula. Sexagesimal, i.e., means base 60. The base 60 model, for those who don't know, is how you establish the area of rectangles in pyramids, i.e., pyramids, or a triangle. Ancient Egyptians used what is known as a base 12 formula. A base 12 formula, according to advanced mathematics, will not give you a perfect pyramid. Anyone who's familiar with baseline Kemetic thought understands that each time they built a pyramid, the architect was looking to build the perfect pyramid. Because any dummy can take his minute understanding and try to replicate a pyramid, but it is a totally different effect or accomplishment to form a true and perfect pyramid, which we know the ancient Egyptians were meticulous with their mathematic application with regard to the structures that they built. With that being said, a true pyramid is based on a sexagesimal formula, which is base 60. A true pyramid has 180 degrees, which is 60 degrees to 3 angles. Mind you, that is based on Sumerian mathematics. So why is it that we can look in ancient Kemet and see Sumerian formulas for what we call Egyptian pyramids? Let's take it a step further. The very first pyramid in Egypt is based on a Sumerian model, a ziggurat, i.e. a step pyramid in Saqqara. To show you how much of a Sumerian model this is, Egypt is a place that is bountiful with limestone. Sumeria doesn't have limestone. It has mud. Hence, all structures were formed with mud brick. When you look at the very first pyramid built in Egypt, which is built after the Sumerian pattern, the pyramid of Saqqara, it is cut down to the size of a mud brick when they had limestone available. Why would you do extra work to build upon a foundation that would eventually lead to a pyramid and cut it down to the actual size of mud brick? You know how hard it is to cut limestone? This is one of the quote-unquote miracles of ancient Kemet that baffles mathematicians today. How is it that they moved these building blocks of limestone? But the very first pyramid built was cut down to the size of mud bricks, modeled after ancient Sumeria. So again, I ask you, why would you do something that is so much harder to do and based on a Sumerian model when you could have just took big cinder blocks and moved it and constructed pyramids like you did in the latter half of your kingdom? Why is it that your very first pyramid is modeled after a Sumerian formula and pattern, and all subsequent pyramids follow the base 60 formula? That lets us know where you got the inspiration from. Because the first pyramids that were formed are documented to be formed in Sumeria. In fact, when we speak about the global diffuse pyramids, or the idea of the pyramidal structure being found all around the world, what model is it, as I shown in that video? It has the step pyramid model. So when you go in Mexico, do you find pyramids looking like the pyramids in ancient Kemet outside of Saqqara? No. You find pyramids after the step pyramid model. So the step pyramid model, which originates in Sumeria, is globally diffuse around the world, which shows you that Sumeria impacted the world globally with their mathematics and with their geometry. So although contrary to popular opinion, we like to teach in Kemet that the Egyptians influenced the entire world with their mathematics, their science, their astronomy, this contradicts the facts. The facts show that the Sumerian formula is found throughout the world. With that being said, you're killed on the idea that the ancient Cometians were the ones who formulated the idea for a pyramid, because the first pyramids in ancient Egypt come out of Saqqara, which is built after the step pyramid model, which everyone knows comes out of Sumeria.
Fantastic, Zion. Beautiful, man. Like I said before, I'll say again, like if you haven't checked out this DVD with the brother Zion Lexx, you know what I'm saying, then hopefully the brother Sarnetta, when he puts the video out, will put out the whole thing and won't cut anything out. And really quickly before we shift gears, I know that you mentioned, and I'm also aware of the fact that Professor Smalls paid you some compliments. Do you want to elaborate a little on that?
Yes.
I know he said that you're, something about, to the effect of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the Hebrew language is an African language which we all should learn. And you can elaborate on any other statements that he made that you might want to.
So the first thing I would like you to do is hold the camera up so you can see the flags behind the beamer that we teach from every Shabbat or every Sabbath. That flag is of what continent, my brother?
Africa.
Why? We understand that Israel is Northeast Africa. Before the building of the Suez Canal, there was no differentiation or separation between Africa and what today is known as the Middle East. On all maps of the world, or of all the continents, before the building of the Suez Canals, before the turn of the 19th century, that entire area was known as Northeast Africa. In fact, Josephus tells us correctly in the book of Antiquities, chapter 2, verses 44 through 48, that the word Africa is of Hebraic origin, that it comes from Abraham's grandson Ophir through the marriage of Keturah in Genesis chapter 25. Ophir, Africa. Hence, the people of North Africa were known always as the people of Afri. And Ophir in Hebrew means the dark land, i.e. the dust of the earth, because Ophir, spelled in Hebrew, ayin, pei, resh, refers to the dark soil from which man was taken from. According to the account of the Torah in Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 2, it says that man was taken from the Adamah, the dust of the earth. Another word for dust in Hebrew is afar. So the ancients began to call the place from which man was originally taken Africa, because man was taken from the original primordial dust of the earth, which is in the land of Africa, but more importantly, the northeast section, Israel or Yasharam.
Right. So, yeah. So that's beautiful, brother. And like I said, I know the professor paid you a lot of compliments in your presentation.
I almost forgot that point.
Yes.
I apologize. So Professor Smalls, after hearing me share my information, he said that, number one, I'm very impressed. This is 35 minutes into my presentation. He actually stopped the presentation to say stop. So far, I'm very impressed with your presentation. Mind you, Professor Smalls is of the Kemetic persuasion. So as much as y'all want to hate Zion Lexx, hate all you want. Someone from your team, who I hold in high regard, because none of y'all could tie his shoe. I hold him in high regard because of his years in the field, because of his respect in academia, but more importantly, his unbiased nature to point out truth when he sees it. And he said, I was impressed by your presentation because you confirmed what I already knew, that the language of Hebrew is an African language, which clearly, based on your presentation, must be studied and discerned. That's powerful. Because you have people like Polite, the Amun Ra squad, Shaka Amos, who will tell you that we don't need anything coming out of the Bible. Not the language, not the culture, not the heritage. When Professor Smalls, who last time I checked, none of y'all could tie a lace on his shoe, said that Hebrew not only is an African language, but based on this presentation, it is clear that it must be studied in order to ascertain a high level of truth. In other words, we can't stop education in Kemet. That's what Israelites been saying all the time. Israelites don't rob Kemet of its legacy. Kemet is included as one of the borders of the land of Eden in the Torah. The Torah speaks of the 4 rivers that sprung forth from the land of Eden. It says that one is the Pishon River, which flowed through the realm of Havilah, which is Sudan, and the White Nile. Then it speaks about the second river, which encompasses the whole land of Cush. That's the Blue Nile. Everyone knows that the Nile River gets its water not just from the White Nile coming from Sudan, but the Blue Nile, which comes from the mountains of Cush. The Torah is the only literary work outside of Kemet to state that fact. So why do you think that Hebrews are against that legacy? What Hebrews are against is the philosophy and ideology coming out of Kemet that contradicts truth. We have the prerogative to contradict truth when we see it doesn't align with factual evidence. In other words, what many people may call truth, if it doesn't actually line up with fact, we can't call it truth. It is the prerogative of every genuine scholar to challenge what your version of truth is. And that is exactly what the Torah does. But the Torah doesn't stop in describing Kemet and the Sudan as being one of the creators of civilization. The Torah goes as far to mention the Tigris and the Euphrates River. And it takes these 4 adjacent rivers and the land surrounding it, and it says that all of these lands represent the cradles of civilization. And guess what? According to modern archaeology, they do. Because modern archaeology, yes, says that Sumeria predates Kemet, but it also says shortly thereafter, Kemet rose. That means, again, we win, because our book describes Sumeria first and Kemet second as being the cradles of civilization. So how dare you have a problem with the fact that we're pointing out a truth that you can see and verify through tangible evidence today?
Right. There's a lot of biased archaeology and a lot of biased scholarship in the conscious community. And I just want to say that we appreciate you with your unbiased research. And I think we as Hebrews, pretty much, we are unbiased in our research. We give Kemet credit for being a great civilization. I think none of us take that away from Kemet, right, but they take things away from the Bible, and that's what we're defending. Now, I want to switch subjects a little bit to a topic that's uncomfortable for most, but it's not uncomfortable for us because we're men, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a Messianic Hebrew. A so-called Messianic meaning that I believe in Yahweh Shai, Jesus Christ. You're a non-Messianic Hebrew, right? Now, you gave an interview on Side of the TV that they thought would destroy the Hebrew alliance. Right. But here I am sitting in Shema Yisrael with you. That's right. As brothers. As brothers. We've seen each other. We had the brotherhood. We had the love, the whole nine, man. You know what I'm saying? And these are Messianic brothers from my camp. And here we are sitting with you in Shema Yisrael. So much for what they thought would destroy the Hebrew alliance. However, I want you to speak in truth with us sitting here on the importance of us as Hebrew Israelites having this discussion about the New Testament, about Christ, about the Most High. How important is this discussion for us as Hebrews to have? Because we see it back and forth on the YouTube. Now, we have some people outside the alliance that take it into the realm of negativity. You know, we've decided that we don't want to do that, but I want to speak on it. I want you to speak honestly and frankly with me about the importance of this discussion, and also some things briefly that you might find problematic with the New Testament. Okay. Speak freely.
The first thing I want to say is this. The idea of Israelites from different factions and from different viewpoints in the Bible on a whole. The idea of us coming together in unity is a beautiful thing. It is the supreme pursuit for brothers who acknowledge one truth, which is the idea that the Bible is the undeniable Word of God. We all believe in the idea that the Bible is the Word of God. Our common denominator is the Torah, that which was revealed to Moses. Whether you're messianic or non-messianic, we all know as Israelites that God spoke and revealed his will to Moses and the children of Israel. It's the reason why we come together with the name of Yasharallah, or some of us say Yisrael. And we don't really tend to get hooked on the idea that some say Yasharallah and some say Yisrael, because even there was a time period in our land where some spoke of Sibolet and some said Shibolet, which is the idea that there has always been a difference of dialect when you cross the two extreme points, vantage points of the geographical land. So the people as far as Dan would say Shibolet, and the people as far as Judah, which is the extreme south, would say Sibolet. So they don't get it confused that Israelites may say different pronunciations for the same truth, because that has always existed. The fact remains that the consonant is what gives the letter its character. So whether one Israelite says Yasharallah and another Israelite says Yisrael, we are still pointing to the fact of the one person who strove with God and with man and will prevail, which is the meaning of Yasharallah and Yisrael. No matter how you want to pronounce it, we agree on that point. With that being said, there's an elephant in the room. So what? We're looking for unity. When you put or you strive for unity in our community, so there's 100 people in our community, let's say, and we manage to push unity and get 100 people in the room, what do you think the 100 people ultimately are going to discuss? Their differences of opinion. So I wasn't being an animal or going against our unity to speak from our congregation with this. Mind you, I didn't go out in public forums and speak against you guys. I did what we always do from this bema or from this congregation. Speak what we know and discern to be true. Just like our Messianic brothers speak in their camps and congregations what they know to be true. At no time did I have a desire or intent in my heart to say I'm going to take a jab at Messianic Israelites. Messianic Israelites teach what they teach. Non-Messianic Israelites teach what we teach. I never went on a public forum to make my statements. I made them all from here. So I believe at the least bit you should understand that my intent was not to destroy any unity that we built, because we built an amazing unity which still exists today, even in the aftermath of all the confusion that seemed to make its way into the unity. But with that being said, when we finally get all of these different groups in one house, what do you think we are going to talk about? One Israelite is going to say, you know, when the 144 picked and Yahweh Shai comes down, you know what that's going to be like? That's the Messianics. You're going to have non-Messianics that say, I can dig the 144,000, but I'm not sure about Yahweh Shai, because the Torah never spoke of him by name. The Torah never says that Yahweh Shai should come. With that being said, you're going to always have a difference of opinion on who the Mashiach or the Messiah is, because the Torah never called him by name. We all agree on that. We all agree that nowhere in the Old Testament is the Messiah prophesied by name. With that being said, it's common sense when we put 100 people in the room who read that book that we're going to have difference of opinion on who that man is. That doesn't mean that we don't believe in the Messiah as non-Messianics. In fact, we don't even like the term non-Messianics. It's a misnomer. Because if you believe in the Bible, you believe that the Creator said a Messiah is coming. So we're all Messianics. The only disagreement is who we believe the Messiah is. So I'm a Messianic, as well as you. And the only reason that we succumb to the idea of using the misnomer non-Messianic is because many of us don't hold or share the idea that Yahweh Shai is the Messiah. Nonetheless, that's the elephant in the room that as brothers and sisters, we are ultimately going to have to face. Because I want to make this very clear. When the Creator says that he's going to take the stick of Yehuda, or Yahweh, which is Judah, and put it in his hand, and take the stick of Ephraim and put it in his hand, and make those two sticks one, in that the 12 tribes shall come together in his hand as one people. That means he's not calling out to a divided people when he's talking about those that shall be saved. He's calling to a people who are united. You understand that? That means that, ultimately speaking, the remnant that the Creator is speaking about that is going to make it, because it does say only a remnant, that remnant is not a people who have divided views. That's a remnant of people who are united in his hand as one stick. This unity is first born out of the fact that we can come together as brothers and say, you know what? Because we're brothers, no matter what our vantage point or our point of difference is, if we agree that our name is Yasharal, if we agree that our name is Yisrael, if we agree that we are brothers, then damn, we can at least sit down at the table and discuss this matter as brothers. We don't have to disagree to the point of bloodshed or hate or envy. I don't like this brother because he doesn't hold my opinion. At the end of the day, that's your brother. Many of us come from families with, although we acknowledge who we are as Israelites, we got family members that is Christian. I got family members that's Christian, Muslim, 5%ers, Rasta. My father's a Rasta. I don't call myself a Rasta. I don't believe in Haile Selassie. But I know who my father is, and I respect my father. The Torah says, Kaved et avika we et imeka lema'an yarikun al hadama asher Yahweh Adonai noten lak. Honor thy father and thy mother, that days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Regardless of my father's religious ideals or heritage-wise, what he chooses, that's my father. I gotta respect it. So if I got to show respect to my father, regardless of his religious ideals or the ideals that he conceives of his heritage, then how much more my brother as well? So yeah, we have differences of opinion, but we have to come down as brothers and put our scholars and strong men in a room and say, hey, we got to confront the elephant in the room. We got the book to go by. It may not all happen in a day, but if there's no effort to bring our scholars and our strong men in one room to speak about what our differences are, to come to one conclusion, then we faking jacks and we're playing games, and the creator don't need us. Because he's not calling to a divided people, he's calling to a united people. So contrary to popular opinion, I love my Messianic brothers. I will bang on anybody before I bang on a Messianic. Are you crazy? That's like telling me I'm supposed to bang on my blood brother because we hold a different point of view. That's my blood brother. Trust me, I will bang on you before I bang on my brother. So although the conscious community would like to exploit the division that exists between Messianics and non-Messianics, let us make this clear for the record. We will bang on you before we bang on one another, because we are brothers and you can't destroy our unity. Get that through your mind.
So Zion, do we need to have this discussion in 2016? Is it time for us to sit down publicly? Because I know you said about behind closed doors. I know you've mentioned that before. We've also mentioned that before.
Right.
Has the time arrived that we, since we have this alliance as brothers, for us to have this discussion publicly? And I guess the addendum to that question will be, what do you think will be the aftermath of that discussion? Do you think we will walk away with the same type of love and unity as brothers that we have? Because I know you, Zion. I watch the way that you present yourself, and I watch the way you present this information, and you are lying, and you are passionate. And I know it will be no different when it comes to this particular subject. You will come as a lion, and you'll be passionate. So my question to you is, should we have this discussion, A? And B, do you feel as though if and when we have this discussion that we will walk away with the same unity that we have achieved before the discussion?
Excellent question. Yes, we should have this discussion. Yes, it should be both public as well as private. Why do I say that? The idea that the Creator is calling out to a united people who he called Yasharawa or Yisrael is a very serious idea that we as Israelites take extremely serious. With that being said, I will compare it to something like the Olympics. When you have an Olympic team that are preparing for an event such as the Olympics, they don't show up to the Olympics the day of without practice because they want to perform at their best, because they want to weed out who should make the team, number one, and we want to ascertain whether or not the person represented is viable and strong enough to represent the team. With that being said, wisdom lets me know that we should first have this conversation behind closed doors, because we should first ascertain whether or not who from our camps can go on the record to defend our points of view without losing their cool, without showing more anger as opposed to genuine passion, knowing how to draw the line between anger and passion. You got people with great intentions, But I heard of an old proverb that says the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So with that being said, we should have this idea of confronting our differences first and foremost behind closed doors as brothers, so that we can show our ability to disagree without destroying one another's characters. Because that would let us know who will represent us. So we might have a brother on my team that when he chose to defend our ideals that we hold high, if he draws the line between passion and anger, and it tips on the side of anger, sorry, my brother, as much knowledge as you have, you cannot make this team. Because this is not about destroying our unity. This is about building upon our unity so that we can come to one conclusion. After all, we're speaking from the same book. With that being said, we have to choose people that can handle that environment. So the conversation must be heard. It must be held. But more importantly, there must be the right representatives.
Okay. I know, Brother Zahab, you said you had a question?
Yeah, I got a question. This is pretty Zahab from last
Yeah,
week. You have brothers who really support you, really like what you're saying, but they saw that interview that you did in question, you know, dealing with Messianic Hebrews, and what would you say to brothers who took some type of offense to what you said about, you know, Yahushua, so on and so forth, and the division between non-Messianic and Messianic?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because you have brothers who do support you and like you, but that interview was kind of hard for some brothers to accept, and they took some type of offense. So what would you say to bridge the gap, or do you stand by your words and say, hey, it is what it is?
Okay, the first thing I want to say is this. The true measure of a man is not the exertion of character. It's the restraint of character. Anybody can get before a camera and show strength or exert one's boldness, but it takes the real mark of a man to restrain himself, to be able to look at the bigger picture, which essentially means to move in wisdom. I make no qualms about the fact that when I did that interview, I was moving in an emotional manner, because I made statements from this congregation that we've made for years, and I was attacked publicly on Facebook for those statements that I made privately in my congregation. I never published that video on my Facebook page. I never took that video and promoted it on social media. That's something that we've been teaching for over 20 years in this congregation. So at once did I never intend to injure our unity by making the statements that I made. That is just how we feel about it. Simply stating, you guys feel that Yahushua is the Messiah, and we feel, based on the information as far as we can see, that he is not. And that's simply what I said in my video. Whether or not my choice of words was the best, I will agree that it was harsh. But we have to be very honest with ourselves and understand that even when our Messianic brothers talk about non-Messianics, the language is sometimes harsh as well. Because I was a person who sat in ISUPK for several meetings. And I heard from ISUPK, and this is not a shot at ISUPK, because regardless of our differences, y'all are still my brothers. You can look at the video right now and say you're not my brother, but I'm greater than my arrogance. And my arrogance will never lead me to say that you're not my brother. We just simply don't agree. But truth be told, I was in ISUPK headquarters, and I heard them say out of their mouths, and I was there to witness it, that all those who don't believe that Yahushua is coming is going to burn in hell. And in fact, when he comes, we Messianics going to be one of the people to put hands and feet and toes on him. That's harsh language too. But did I ever make a video pointing that out? No. Because I understand that in our differences, we are both passionate. Do we always use the best choice of words? No. At the end of the day, we Israelites. We ain't no joke. That's the reason why the conscious community don't have a viable subject unless it includes the name Israel. We are a no-joke people. And what we represent is immense. That's why we are the hot commodity in the conscious community. Therefore, when Messianics speak, they speak passionately. And when non-Messianics speak, they speak passionately. Nonetheless, I want to use the opportunity to show humility and apologize. Does that make me weak?
No.
No. But what that does do is show you my sincerity. I have nothing to gain or prove by telling you anything contrary to the spirit of wisdom, truth, and more or humility. In humility, I apologize. Why? Because before all of our differences, we're brothers. Before I can decide what I think, in contradistinction to what you think, we are brothers. We share a bloodline. We come out of the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Before I learned how to speak, we were brothers. And when I reach old age and I can't speak anymore, we still brothers. Before I can articulate my thoughts to even get to a point where I can disagree with my brother, we still are brothers. As your brother, I apologize. When I did the video, I was definitely emotional because I was being attacked publicly on social media, and I felt the need to defend my stance. And I did it in a way that was uncomely for brothers to do. With that being said, this is not fake, because I also first apologized privately. I called Priest Daniela, and I apologized to him privately. I spoke with Brother Hashar, and I apologized to him privately. And to both of those brothers, I asked that they extend my apologies to both of their camps and congregations as well. The most sincere apology is the one that is done face to face or brother to brother. This apology that's coming now is after the fact. So if you want to look at the video and say he's fake because they're here now, contrary to what you know, this brother knows that I did this in private long before you're watching this video. That's because it came from the heart. And no matter what the conscious community tries to usher in, to destroy this unity, you cannot, because it is of the Almighty God. And nothing that we agree or disagree on is greater than the lineage that flows through our blood. It's the reason why we're today enjoying the Mayweather fight. As brothers. Right. And guess what? My brother may say Yahweh Shai, and I may say I don't know about Yahweh Shai, but you know what we agreed? We agree that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has revealed himself in this time and in this day to us as Israelites and has awakened us as a people. And that we as a people will rise to a state of greatness like we achieved years ago. And this nation shall become one in God's hand to triumph above all things that represent an adversity towards our growth and edification, spiritually speaking. So contrary to all opinions, we are one people. And if you are genuine as an Israelite, you cannot hate me for my difference of opinion with regard to who the Messiah is. What you can do is appreciate my honesty to tell you. Because at the end of the day, I appreciate a man who tells me where he stands, as opposed to a man who stands in secret and holds an idea that is in contradiction to what I share, but does not share it with me. We respect truth. And the truth is, we have disagreements. But the ultimate truth is a prophecy in our name. The name Yasharallah, or what we call Yisrael, is a futuristic prophecy. Because the letter Yod, or Yad, in Hebrew, is the first person future when you prefix it to a noun. And it means he who will struggle with God and man, yet he will prevail. The prophecy inherent in our name tells us that regardless of our differences, we will prevail as a nation and come to one conclusion. And that one conclusion is inherent in the idea that the Almighty God is revealing himself in us. And no matter who or what we believe the plan is, ultimately speaking, God is in control of all things. And those whose eyes are closed among us will be opened from God. And whose eyes will be closed or open is determined by God, not any one of us.
I got another question, brother. So, we know that there's love between us, right? Now, what is the plan if them Kemet brothers, if them Kemet dudes try to use that as a wedge in the future? Any debates, anything like that? What if they use the fact that we call on Yahweh Shai, brothers don't? What if they use that as a wedge to try to divide us? What is your plan in the future to combat that? Because we know they are going to use that.
Right. It's the genesis of confusion to look for disagreement to destroy unity. That's the genesis of confusion. Anyone who's looking to cause confusion in a camp will first look at what is a point of contradiction between a camp. What do you disagree upon? Because if we could fall upon what you disagree upon, then maybe we could usher in disunity. But here's something special about our people. From the inception of our nation, there was disagreement. So if from the very inception of our nation, we disagreed on who's who and what's what, that lets you know that there's no disagreement that could ultimately destroy our unity. You know that our people didn't even want to choose Moses? There was times when we was like, who is he that he should be our leader? There was times when we questioned God. Who is God? Bring me back the leeks from Egypt. I miss that. Bring me back the food coming out of Kemet. I miss that. This agreement existed among our people before the very birth of our nation. If you understand that. Before our nation was formulated as a people, as a nation, we had disagreement on who the leader is and how much we should serve and even follow God.
And if I may add, there was a disagreement about whether Yah was the king, the Most High was the king, whether we should have a physical king that we could see.
That's right.
Even with that. I'll let you elaborate on that. I just wanted to bring that out.
That's right. You're absolutely right. There was even a time where we needed, as men, because we live in a tangible realm or a tangible reality, based on the idea that if I can't experience it through my five senses, it can't be reality, I need a mortal king. So God said, all right, give them a king. Give them what they want, Samuel. Don't get mad at them. Don't chastise them. Even though I am the true king, give them a king. But give them some stipulation. With that king is going to come a lot of vexation. Because he is going to control affairs of your life that I wouldn't even demand of you. So man always looks for the tangible in order to increase his understanding of his reality. When the real discernible reality is intangible, it is the Almighty God. It is beyond your grasp. You can't experience the Almighty God through your five senses, yet you understand that he exists. With that being said, there's nothing greater than the unity that coexists between us right now. And as far as I'm concerned, even though I violated in response to feeling attacked by attacking my Messianic brothers openly, giving in to my own anger, the aftermath of that shows how much greater our love and appreciation is for one another than any error we may commit in striving towards our unity. No man in this room or in general is above error or sin. I'll be the first one to tell you that I am not without fault. Therefore, I can't cast the first stone. Nonetheless, the stone is going to be cast. It's going to be shot. Judgment is going to hit the earth. And the only thing that's going to stand when that judgment hit the earth is all of these people that are united. And the foundation of being a Hebrew Israelite is when you lift up your voice in prayer and you say, I don't speak of Allah. I don't speak of Asad. I don't speak of any lowercase G-O-D. I speak of the God who said, not only is my name Yahweh or Yehovah, or in English, Jehovah, he also said that his name eternally is the Elo or El of Abraham, Yitzchak or Yaakov. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is what is the foundation of our unity, which means no matter what we believe as brothers, so long as we open and end our prayers with the idea that we speak of the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we know that there is nothing greater than our love and unity for one another. Something the conscious community doesn't even have. The conscious community does not have a solid foundation. We stand on a firm base. When we say that we keep God's law, we strive our best to do it. We don't say that we follow Ma'at and go in Chinese food stores and act reckless.
Right.
We don't say that we follow Ma'at and we got Christmas gifts hanging from the roof of our buildings. When we say we follow Torah, we say that we divorce ourselves completely from pagan traditions. Don't let me get greasy and tell me how many Kemet cats I've been around that I've seen Christmas gifts with. Don't let me get greasy. Don't bash and bang on the Bible and you got Christmas gifts hanging out your house. I could say your name. Don't let me get greasy.
Well, Brother Zion, we about to close. I'm going to let McGunn ask one more question because I heard that the fight is about to start. So go ahead, Brother McGunn, real quick.
Y'all can edit this out if y'all want, whatever, but I'll ask you a question. Do you believe Native Americans and Hispanics are Israelites according to history?
Excellent point. If not for being in our sacred vicinity, I would respond with an emphatic H-E-L-L, yeah. Definitely. Anybody familiar with the book of the Apocrypha will readily be able to show you how our people came into America long before Amerigo Vespucci, long before Christopher Columbus. The first navigators to America were not the Commissions. Calm down, slow it down, bring it back. The first people to come into the ancient Americas were Hebrew Israelites. The Paleo-Hebrew was on record saying that.
Thank you.
I have yet to find hieroglyphics throughout the ancient Americas, but I do find the Paleo-Hebrew. But nah, brother, we do find pyramids. Well, check the author, because we don't even subscribe the building of the pyramids to you. So because we find a pyramid in America, don't mean that Egyptians came in and built that up. But yes, when you talk about Native Americans and you talk about Latinos, of which the mother of my children is Latina, mind you, she's Puerto Rican. And when the conscious community finally sees a picture of her, which I'm reluctant to show because of how childish people are in taking pictures and making memes and all kind of videos to trash people, when she finally surfaces, I show her, and she looks much lighter than my brothers right now of the Latino background who are also Israelites, they will understand how true I am when I acknowledge and tell you that when we look at Latinos and we look at Native Americans, we are looking at the children of Israel. It is genetically impossible to neglect that fact.
Beautiful. Beautiful, brother. Brother Zion, yo, I thank you for giving us this time on Maccabees TV. Is there any closing words you want to say before we close out? And I'm hoping that we do this again soon. Go ahead, brother.
Absolutely. I want to close out by saying, giving all honor and praise to the God of our ancient forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, the supreme intelligence of the universe, the God who spoke and the universes came into existence, the God who was beyond investigation, the God who you cannot experience through your five senses, but you can grasp him through your spirit, the God who spoke and said that Israel shall come forth and be the messengers of his revealed will in the earth. And we are walking that talk today, as we have walked that walk yesterday. And if you continue to follow us on our journey of reclaiming our legacy, you will see in the future that we will connect with our true and living God. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, brother. Thank you, Brother Zion. We'll see you again soon on Maccabees TV, man. Shalom.
Hallelujah. Shalom.